My name is Prabal Chaturvedi and I help and support our SAP customers here at Pathlock. I've been doing GRC related activities for 15 years now, and I started working with Versa version followed by SAP GRC 5.3, 10.0 and other GRC products, and was responsible for the GRC solutions there for quite some time until I joined Pathlock. And at Pathlock, which was previously known as Greenlight, our business has been helping customers extend their scope of compliance out to other business applications and just provide automation where we can. Today, I'm going to provide more of a kind of a tactical session, specifically talking about how to work with Ariba, identify user risk, compliant provisioning access to Ariba and SAP when you start bringing in cloud applications, user access reviews, SOD reviews, and even emergency access management. So while access control firefighting is pretty ABAP specific, customers do need or have a requirement to do emergency access management or say privilege access management for some of the cloud solutions. I am going to dive into that as well. I am also going to talk about how to think about SOD management if your organization has started adopting cloud solutions like Ariba, Workday, Salesforce, etc. Because I can see that trend is really just starting to kick in, and customers will have 5 and 15 cloud applications probably in future. And then we'll go into QA. So a lot of customers, hopefully you are on this webinar as you would have access control or maybe getting ready to acquire access control. And there are thousands of SAP customers that are using this solution. And it's because it works. It has filled any requirements related to user access governance for many years. You can have it fully deployed, meaning you have robust workflows or might have hundreds of business users using access control to request and approve access to SAP. And it delivers access governance that allows you to comply with any of your external or internal audits when it comes to managing or providing access to SAP. One critical issue I think that was on hold for a lot of customers is access control didn't have a roadmap after version 12. It was kind of end of life. So after the GRC conference last year, I think a lot of people heard that access control is pretty critical to some of your processes. So the solution management development teams have announced that there will be another version of a subsequent version to GRC 12.0. And it's going to be called as SAP GRC edition for SAP HANA. And it's going to cover access control, process control, risk management, the 3 GRC solutions that primary once Q1 26 that's planned. So if you were waiting to see what was going to happen with access control or how to manage governance risk and compliance, going forward, at least you have a roadmap and SAP has a vision to continue on the SAP access control. And I think that's pretty critical to kind of think that you are looking for a solution to cover you for access governance for next few years really. Enterprises are going to have a very robust user access governance solution. You are going to be dealing with hybrid environments, as I said, with both on-prem, maybe cloud ERP or cloud applications. A lot of these applications have extremely different security authorization concepts, and that drives the need more and more of automation. And it's impossible to manage monitoring access and segregation of duties when all of these business applications have completely different access authorization models. The good old days of access control was when everything was in SAP and you could manage all of your risk which was specific to SAP ERP within your access control solution. And you don't have to worry about different user IDs, or you don't have to worry about different authorization concepts. Access control fit the bill for your business processes and monitoring user access because everything was in SAP. I just pulled here 30 risk of out of the box SOD rules set that's delivered with access control. Has been for years, and whether your risk including functions for procurement, inventory, payable assets, vendor pricing, all of the procure to pay supply chain type SODs were managed consistently and comprehensively with your SOD rule set. You could have started with out of the box or you could have developed your own SOD rule set, or you could have implemented one that your partner gave you. But the fact of matter is your rule set really is everything when it comes to segregation of duties, clean role compliance, access of all those things really rely on a robust and comprehensive SOD rule set. When you added custom T codes, a different way to create purchase orders, or you added PO document types that were custom PO document types, new inventory movements, or even additional posting keys. If you configured new ones for financial transactions, all of those things should have been reflected in your SOD rule set. So when the business introduced something new in SAP, there should have been some type of process between the business IT security and admin of GRC to come in here and update so that this risk set, whether it was related to HR, payroll, inventory management, or procurement. Well, before the move to S4, although the S4 has triggered a lot of cloud adoption, but even before that, a lot of SAP organizations were adopting primarily Ariba Cloud and SuccessFactors Cloud. Some, if customers didn't adopt procurement cloud solutions like Ariba, they adopted Coupa, Jaggaer, Tradeshift, any number of other business procurement applications that were available on the market. And typically, if they didn't adopt SuccessFactors, they adopted Workday. So as these activities that were always in SAP, creating purchase order, maintaining employees, whatever those things were, your rule set that was covering it. But now when those things move outside of SAP, you are not able to monitor those on an automated or efficient way. So if you think out that just Ariba, which is what this webinar is about, purchasing and activities related to purchasing may be moved completely or partially outside of ERP. And I say partially because companies tend to adopt different things when they are adopting a cloud solution. They don't go 100% on day one. A lot of companies we find are adopting like things like contracts and sourcing as the first go live for Ariba. Then they may indirect purchasing only through Ariba, different things like so it's not like 100% of your procurement activity just automatically shifts out of ERP into Ariba. And it's very important to understand, just like new T codes or new objects, what activities now are happening outside of core, and specifically are they happening everything outside, or I am still buying out of SAP and buying out of Ariba. Those things are really important for you to be aware of because you need to update your risk set. So you need to understand, as the owner of your SOX control or your SOD management group, your compliance internal controls, how do you make sure you don't start missing user risk that you were previously reporting, and you were reporting on them because it was all in access control. You can do it manually. You can set up dummy processes specifically for Ariba. There was a lot of documentation around setting up dummy roles and using those to do your SOD risk analysis, setting up dummy role that could transfer into a way of provision access in Ariba. And using access control, you could also set up direct connection and configure one-time connection between access control and Ariba and map to the security authorization concept, so that when you run a batch risk analysis and ad hoc risk analysis or even simulate risk real time, you will be able to understand what users have access to do in SAP Ariba as well as SAP. Giving you that cross-system SOD risk, the way we do it to understand the authorization concept of whatever cloud procurement system you are using, or say HR system or CRM, SRM, or even if you are a company that buys another company that's running Oracle Fusion Dynamics, whatever the case may be, we can understand those security authorization concepts and map that data back into access control into what it needs to understand the equivalent of a role T code, objects, fields, and values. What are those things in Ariba or other applications? And this is how we can provide very fine grained SOD risk analysis and do an apple to apple comparison, always based on permissions in SAP versus permissions in Ariba, so that we can tell you who can create purchase orders and approve them in Ariba and pay vendors out of SAP ERP, which is a typical SOD that is going to be in your procurement risk. So I'm going to show you now nothing more than access control screens, because it is really one-time connection and mapping of user information, role information, and authorization information from a cloud app like Ariba to bring into access control, and then you simply run your periodic repository sync jobs against an additional systems, in this case Ariba. And this is going to bring in high level user role and object or authorization object data coming from Ariba. And that is going to allow you to update your master data here. So if you look at your procurement risk now, I have the first 8, but still these procurement risks may not change one bit your initial ones that you are monitoring especially. And if you are going to start doing purchasing in Ariba, but you are not going to keep some level of purchasing in SAP ERP, in that case, your rule set is what your rule set is. And you also need to start thinking about what I'm doing in Ariba. You can have single system risk in the Ariba, or you can have critical actions, critical permissions, roles, you can have segregation of duties that all are within Ariba single system itself. And if you look and say, maybe I'm going to move my procurement, my purchasing, my buyer or buying, that's what I'm moving to Ariba first, then actually requires me to change my SOD rule sets. So if you look at those first 30 risks again, more than 20 of them will now need to have a cross-system risk setup. Because if I'm maintaining purchase orders in Ariba, but I'm still doing invoicing, receipts, payments, and inventory transactions within my core ERP, so right off the bat, if you look at just your out of the box procurement risk, there are a lot of more than 20 of the initial 30 of the first page that's going to be go in a cross system risk analysis, and that's very important. Then you may need to set up, or you will need to come in and set up your cross system risk. In this case, I want to know who's purchasing items and processing payments. So this is a cross application risk. And when I look at them to see that I'm buying for the risk, I want to know who's buying from Ariba and who is buying from SAP. And if you look at this standard access control functionality, if one or more of your function is set as cross system, and when you go to generate your rule set for the particular risk, it will build out across cross system that it will show me users that can buy in Ariba and pay vendors out of SAP, and that will be your cross system risk. And then you can run your report in access control against that. So if you go into my user risk violations report, I'm going to run against Ariba and S4, and all in one go, I can run all my systems against cross systems. And now when I look at my reporting coming out of access control, again, this is a SAP Access Control UI, then I will see my risk is because the user has ability to do one functions in Ariba and the second function in SAP. From this screen, you can do anything you want to do if you think about what you are doing today, or your risk analysis reports, you are exporting it or downloading and sending it to what TIPCO or different types of Tableau, different types of reporting solutions or data warehouses, or do you have some kind of automatic email notification going out to users that you attach these things to? None of that has to change absolutely, because you are doing is including more systems into your scope, but any processes you have built around this and can just continue one of those processes. All right, I think I touched on everything there, and I wanted to touch on on the provisioning. So access control was really built into the provision access to SAP, and that's a black and white option authorization concept. However, if you need to provision access to something like a cloud solution, there could be anywhere from 10 to 30 user attributes that required to do provision access to for Ariba. You are going to need things like purchasing orgs, approval limits, plans. You may need all kinds of information that will tell you how to create and keep users up to date in Ariba cloud solution. But I can come in and request access to Ariba just like I request access to SAP. Typically, customers will have workflow setup. I'm going to give you an example. Like one of I see is 90% of the time the users manager will be first reviewer and approver, and the role owner will be the second approver. So in this case, because we are doing repository sync against Ariba, the roles for Ariba will come in, and you can go into your business role management, assign attributes, who's the owner, the customer determinator based on location, whatever those things are. All of that again is just a standard access control functionality. But if you are going to do it on Ariba roles, then if you have a process built into a prevent new risk which is happening in your business application. Now your cross simulation of risk will go out in real time and see what does this user have access to do in SAP. So uh, if you see this, user have access to do in SAP, what access they have to do in Ariba, and what are they requesting access to do, and what will that role or roles cause additional conflicts. And here you can see they are requesting S4 role, that will cause them to have new conflicts unless you mitigate from here. And again, whatever you are doing today, you can do here, go select a mitigation and assign it to a risk and continue and approve this request. The other thing that we typically do for things like Ariba or any other cloud application is we may have additional source systems. Typically your access control system is probably connected to either success factors, active directory, or any other source system in the market. Some place to get user to manager information, maybe some other critical user attributes that would be just to create users in SAP. But now I need to create a user in Ariba, and so I'm going to go and get additional information, like I said, approval limits, purchase orgs, plans, cost centers, and all of these things may be required to create a new user in Ariba. So we will fetch that data, that we may configure the request a little bit different, add some fields into that, but we can map and send this to Ariba when we create that user or change that user. The other thing I will say is that if the source data changes, we constantly pull that source system and say, okay, my approval limit and success factor just moved from $5,000 so to say $1 lakh. We can pick that up and say that there was a change and push it to users record in Ariba. And we just use a zero stage workflow, so people don't have to approve that unless you want to stop it on a request and have someone approve it. But most of the customers just let it flow through so that Ariba always stays up to date, and whatever your source data is, your record of truth will be remaining in the source detail. This is just example of a user attributes we typically pick up, push into Ariba when we create users. So, and when we go fetch this from different data sources, doesn't have to be success factors, it could be Workday or could be any number of applications that you use in your environment. One other thing that I want to say here, a real quick a lot of customers are using HR triggers in access control. That is fabulous functionality. You can also set up HR triggers to Workday. But if you have an HR trigger come through an employee is terminated or employee transfers, you can kick off a request that will, or a ticketing that will generate a request and show either the new user's manager or the old manager what that user has access to do currently, and have them review that none of that has to change. Either just think about a termination request that can come through a termination access to Ariba, or to say SAP to Salesforce, any of the application that are connected. And that is a big ROI. As well as another thing to think about is that from an audit or control or say SOX perspective, all of your stakeholders using access control for auditing and looking at audit logs continue to go into access control for audit logs. It's just that Ariba will be shown there, your rules for Ariba will be shown, and your change for all your risk. Your access reviews and so on, or all of the audit trail is within access control itself. Huge ROI. And if you mean that it's just kind of a step back and think about it, if you had a role owners approving request for access to procurement roles in SAP and they were using access control, and you bring Ariba into this, typically all those role owners and approvers, they would be already familiar with access control, and now they're just approving requests that show Ariba is, and it is being assigned. So there is a big adaptation value here too, that you don't have to train your end users, because your Ariba users used to be your SAP ERP users, and reviewers already are all right to, and hence I'm going to talk about how firefighting and emergency access management is a piece that we can also do from Pathlock Cloud, and is a separate access control UI for that. Okay, now if you need access for firefighting to cloud solution and audit logging for what your firefighters or privileged users did in the application, we can provide that for all of the cloud solutions or many of the cloud solutions in the market. So a firefighter would need to come in and request a role to firefight in a business application here. You can see that I can request for any system that I have connection to Salesforce, BTP, Workday, whatever the case. You will have one system for firefighting for SAP ERP, and that will be access control and other elevated access request. And there will be certain set of roles. Probably you can identify these that would be available to select for the firefighting, or you can define certain tasks for us to for the people to select, and then want the flow through some type of firefighter emergency access process, that I can access the request for 10 minutes to unlimited number of hours, and then I just enter other information that you may want to you require for the configuration perspective or for the audit perspective. And the last thing we do is just in the demo scenario accept terms and conditions, saying that I'm going to do only firefighting activities, and I know it's all going to be logged, and I know someone's going to review everything. So I'm doing whatever I've been asked to do, and then I submit the request. In Pathlock, as a owner, I'm going to see my request to approve, and then I'm going to see the request that I need to review. So in this case, I'm going to come in and look at my firefighter log that I need to review. And sorry, and it's going to show me information around the request, and the employee, it's also going to have a file, or it will show in the line of the request itself the change the user made while they had that elevated access. And it is pretty simple, but I'm not sure we know how to go in and do a turn in Ariba itself, but we can track everything that happens, and it's more of a I don't know English type of a review, so I can always see the change in currency language or currency back again into a default one. So you can see this is what the change has been done. So if you think that about think about some of these cloud solutions like Ariba, the audit log is massive. It's capturing absolutely everything that anybody is doing, and auditors will tell you it is impossible to get through all the logs generated. Typically, audit wants to see things in Ariba, and they want to know who went in, who created a user with the admin role. They also would want to know who changed a user. They want to know who went in and created a purchase order, approved a purchase order, changed a purchase order, and they want to know if anybody changed configuration. Those are the things that auditors would want to know, and that's what Pathlock is capable of capturing it. So this is an example of being able to approve the audit logs for SAP Ariba. It's an integration admin role that was assigned, and a lot of other information is shown when the access was requested, approved, how long they had it, and so on. All of this very similar to access control firefighting. We call it emergency or elevated access management, and this is within Pathlock Cloud, but it's one process for all of your cloud firefighting. So this is kind of my last section, and it's really thinking about your strategy early on. We tend to talk about things like out of the box rule set. When we are delivering is content, no one can tell you or anybody else that what is your cross system risk will be, and it could be various iterations. It is always going to be it's always going to change, but we can provide and do provide out of the box content. So there is like 33 things that you want to monitor in Ariba: remittances, invoicing, and that's if you adopt everything in Ariba. There is 4 or 5 modules, and it's not like an infinite number of things you can do in Ariba, like invoicing, payments. If you adopt those things, receive services, maintain purchase order, approve purchase orders, requisition, things like that. So we can give you the content to understand what does a user need to be able to do activities in Ariba? Now it is up to you to work with your business to set up your risk. But it's not like that a whole another ERPs or not hundreds of thousand things. It's really just best of cloud solutions, or say 30-40 functions you would need to monitor. And then you have to have a very good relationship with your business and your project teams to understand as things move out. When I talk about some setting your strategy early, it's keeping your risk list up to the date. But more importantly, it is when you first start adopting cloud solutions, you need to set up your strategy. If you start downloading workarounds or manual processes, is going to lock you in potentially into a state that's not going to be very sustainable for anybody. Because if Ariba is the first one trying to adopt, just think I start adopting warehouse management solution, and all of my inventory transitions, my scrapping, my receipts, my inventory counts, all of that starts happening outside SAP warehouse management or SAP ERP. Now I have several more risks that will uh, be cross system, and many of those risks could be cross Ariba and warehouse management. If you are like some of our customers, you have three function risks. You could have three business applications included for one SOD. uh, I want to know who can create purchase order in Ariba, receiving my goods into warehouse management, and pay the vendor out of SAP. I mean, that is impossible to do in a manual or workaround, I would say. And third application, a lot of people adopting master data governance solution. This will impact all of your business processes areas, not just procurement, but your customers, your general ledger accounts, your material masters, your vendor masters. All of that starts moving outside of your core SAP, as well as so that this starts to get into a big mismatch of where these activities are happening. So if you have access control today, I think the one thing to consider is it can be your go forward solution. You can pull off all of these other applications in the access control, and you can do apple to apple comparison for many of the cloud applications. When we do these integration, we can provide you content, and that's function definitions or activity definitions, how these activities take place, things like Workday, Coupa, Salesforce, and other applications in the market. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Just kind of here is I'm talking about about we can also do user access reviews and SOD reviews. So if I if with if you see all the applications, with all the applications we just talk about, how would you send a campaign, how would you be able to send it to a supervisor for a user? But now that a user access review would contain the rows for all of the systems that are connected to access control. Same thing could be an SOD review here. And if we have automated or enabled provisioning, if I have a user access review that comes to me and this employee is no longer with the company, and if I make that known here in the action of all these access would be removed once I approve this request and send it to a the IT team to take care of it. It's a huge ROI for user access reviews and access control as well. So this is how typically reviewers will receive a request, and then they take a call that whether user has left the organization, whether we have to continue with the access, or do we want to revoke the access. Okay. So again, if you have access control, we can help you bring any other application, and if you want to automate everything from risk analysis to compliant provisioning to user access reviews, or have access control access control will be your one source of truth. And another thing I just want to say is that a lot of applications like Ariba, Workday has SOD reports that you can run in Ariba, but that will never tell you that same user access to do 15 other things in SAP or warehouse management. So it's a very silo approach, and it will only get you so far. Now when these cloud applications are being coming in the market, we need an application, we need a product which can connect and integrate with all these applications and give you a holistic view of the risk, the compliance, the provisioning, as well as the SOD. Also, if I can, if I configure that, if I can do a function 1 in Ariba, I cannot do function 2, and again, those are great controls and they should be deployed for sure. But again, that user typically will also have access to other business systems. So the cross system has to be a kind of your strategies to make sure you know what these users have access to do. All right, so use access control to automate access. Make sure that you grant and revoke access at the right time, whether it's for firefighters or it's for just for users that come and go get hired and terminated and transferred. You have to monitor everything again using the HR triggers. Make sure you know what users have access to do. No matter what the business application is on the back end of that, but you should be able to monitor for excessive and unintentional access and make sure you're always doing it at fine grain level. Now that's very important when I say fine grain level. Even if you have an identity management solution like SailPoint, Savient, it's only going to get you so far, which might give you a lot of false reports, and it will be maintenance doing a nightmare, spending nightmare time and using the access control to continue. But if you want to achieve the granular fine-grained SOD risk analysis, you don't have to deal with false reports and be audit ready, because access control has tons of audit logs, and those audit logs will now contain requests for Ariba, campaigns for user access reviews for Ariba, your rule sets for Ariba, and that cross Ariba SAP risk and all the changes will be part of your change logs in your existing control reports. Okay, I guess Stephanie, that's it for the today. I would want to thank you everyone for joining this webinar. Over to you, Stephanie.
Yeah, if you do have any questions, please add them into the question box right now, and we would be happy to answer any of those. Okay, our first question is, how many systems do you have out of the box rule sets for?
Okay, so that's a very good question. Whenever it's a question we get every time. I mean, it's a conversation with a customer. What you can provide me out of the box. Again, I think we don't have out of the box rule set for a lot of applications unless you are going with the standard ERPs like Dynamics or PeopleSoft or SAP or Oracle, or Salesforce. I would say we have anywhere around 15 to 20 of the primary cloud applications, especially procurement. But yeah, it's a conversation depending on what cloud application you are using. And having said that, we are constantly getting more and more content that we can deliver, so it's an ongoing process. But to conclude, we do have out of the box rule set for all the critical ERPs in the market, having SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, Dynamics, Salesforce, and including their cloud applications too, like SAP Ariba, Oracle Fusions, SAP SAC, SAP BTP, and so on.
Okay, great. Our next question is there a limit to how many systems can be integrated?
I have known customers that have around 300 SAP instances integrated with access control. So when we first started integrating systems into access control, it was 1 or 2 systems, but now customers are licensing 10, 15. We have one customer that has almost 50 systems integrated, and that's because they are using cloud solutions. They are specific by plant or say so many plants. They have as many systems as we have connected to with the Pathlock cloud. So it depends on what kind of systems they have or they want to integrate. But yes, there is no limit to how many systems we can bring into access control.
Okay, and our next question is, can you still use the logical rule set methodology when you connect to a cloud application like Salesforce or Coupa or any other application?
The logical rules, I think, is to help you to ease the maintenance of SOD rules and access control. So you create logical groups or logical systems. If you want the rules to be saved across multiple ERP systems, I think the typical thing is nothing different. When we start bringing in these other applications, you still can use logical systems or logical rules to manage both SAP and cloud systems within access control.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions we have for right now. But if you do have any more questions, you can reach out to Prabal at his email address here that's listed on the screen, or you can reach out to us at Pathlock at info@pathlock.com, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming, and we hope to see you at future webinar events.